I'm Glenna Mason, 4-H agent for Orangeburg and Calhoun counties. Today we're in the 4-H kitchen. We're going to begin with our Baking 101 class, and we're starting with a basic biscuit recipe. Biscuits are so easy. I don't know why people buy canned biscuits or other things to replace good old home-baked biscuits. So let's get started. Remember, before baking, to read through your recipe. Make sure you get all of your ingredients out and all of your equipment out. I've washed my hands. My hair is too short to tie back, but if you have long hair, tie your hair back, put on an apron, and let's get started. Biscuits are so easy. They just have flour, milk, baking powder, salt, and shortening in them. I've got here with me 1 cup already measured into my bowl, but I need to sift my flour. To sift flour, I need a strainer, and I pour my flour in, and I just turn my spoon around, stir it around so that all the lumps in the flour are out. And I can also just kind of tap it. A spoon makes it go a little bit faster. I'm not only getting the lumps out of my flour, I'm making it a finer flour and also adding air. Now, what if you don't have a sifter? A metal strainer like I use will do, or you can see this is my sifter, and you can tell it's been around for a while. They're kind of hard to find. That's why most people use just a metal strainer. So I've sifted my flour. Remember, when you're taking your flour, that you spoon it in, no packing. I want to overfill it, and then I want to level it off. If you don't have sifted flour in this recipe, it's not going to hurt a great deal, but you're just not going to have a finer texture in your biscuits as you would if you sifted your flour. So I have spooned it in, leveled it off, and now I have 2 cups of flour. I didn't pack it in or anything. It needs to be light and fluffy. Now to this, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon. Make sure you get your measurements corrected on your measuring spoons. I'm going to scoop this in, and remember that has a straight edge on that can that I can level that off. I'm going to also add 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Now, what is 3/4 teaspoon? When you're measuring, you have a 1/4 and a 1/2. I can measure a 1/4 teaspoon 3 times to make 3/4, or I can measure a 1/2 teaspoon and a 1/4 together. So I'm going to choose that one, and I'm going to get my straight edge because I simply dip that 1/2 teaspoon in there. There's my 1/2 teaspoon, and here goes my 1/4 teaspoon. Just like a dry measurement, I'm going to level that off. I don't want my biscuits too salty. I'm going to take a fork, and I'm just going to kind of stir these together so that I don't have my baking powder and my salt all in one spot. So just kind of stir that together lightly. Now, shortening is our next ingredient. I've used my straight edge or a rubber scraper to scrape in my shortening, level it off with my knife. This is a dry measuring cup. Shortening is not dry, but it is considered in a dry measuring cup. So I want to make sure that I get all of my shortening out. Go around the edge of that. I want all that shortening. Shortening is a fat. Some people make biscuits with butter, but for this one, we're making it with a shortening. So get all that shortening out. And next, we're going to use our pastry blender. Your pastry blender was in your kit. What this is going to do, this is going to cut in our shortening. Now, what do I mean by cut in? Can you see in that bowl that big blob of shortening? After I cut this in, I'm going to see small pieces of shortening. So I don't want to see, and all I'm doing is just putting that down, cutting it over and over and over again. It's got a rounded bottom to it, so I can scrape the sides of the bowl, making sure I'm getting all my flour incorporated. And that's it. Sometimes on the side of the bowl, you see where shortening kind of stacks up on the side here. If that happens, I can just scrape that off, put it back in the bowl, and keep going. This is not a hard process, but it is very easy, and it makes for a very tender biscuit. What's happening is that shortening is being covered up by flour, and when that shortening melts in the oven, that makes for a nice and flaky biscuit. So I'm just going to get over and over and over again, moving that flour around, scraping the bottom of the bowl, making sure I don't see big blobs of shortening in there. Some people say it looks like crumbs, or it looks like small English peas. So I'm going to tap all of that out. And as you can see, I don't have a big glob of shortening in there anymore. Now, I'm going to take my 3/4 cup of milk, pour that in. And that's all the ingredients we need for our biscuits. I'm going to take a fork, stir this around, make sure you're stirring to the bottom. I want this to form a soft dough. So keep stirring all the way to the bottom. It will form a dough on itself. I'm just scraping the sides, scraping all the way down to the bottom, getting all of that flour incorporated. Doesn't need a heavy hand. Biscuits are very light, and you need to treat them that way. So you can see I didn't do anything just by stirring that dough formed into a ball. Now I'm going to clean off my counter here because I need some space to work. To roll this dough out, I need just a light covering of flour. So I'm going to take this, just spoon in some flour, not too much. You don't want to dry biscuits, so don't cover your counter with flour. Simply pat it out. I can pat my hands and I can get this dough out of my bowl. So I scrape all of my dough. It might be just a little sticky. That's why I dusted my hand. And now, once I get my dough out, I'm going to lightly knead. Now, does anybody know what kneading is? Kneading is simply working with your hands. So I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of flour on my hands, and I'm going to form this into a ball. By kneading, I'm pushing the dough, folding it, pushing with my heel of my hands, and turning it. So I'm going to just do this for a little while till it forms a smooth ball of dough. If I were making a yeast bread, this would be done for about 10 minutes or so. But this is a biscuit dough, and I just want it to be a little bit smoother. See how much smoother that dough is now that I've kneaded it a little bit. Spread a little bit more flour here. I'm going to pat it. Now, this needs to be patted to about 1/2 inch. If you don't know what 1/2 inch is, I keep a ruler in my kitchen. So look at 1/2 inch and take a look at it. Is that too thick? Which mine is just a little bit too thick. I like to pat it dry or pat it out instead of roll it with the rolling pin because I think I make for thicker biscuits when I do that. So I'm going to pat this out, measure it, see if I've got 1/2 inch. And I think I've got 1/2 inch, so we want to make sure. I'm ready to cut my biscuits out. Without that insert, that just becomes a biscuit cutter. Now when I'm cutting out my biscuits, I want to start on the edge and then move around, and I don't want to push and twist, I just want to push down. When I push and twist, that seals the edges of the dough and it causes the biscuit not to rise very much. So push, press, and let go. Push, press, and let go. And sometimes they get stuck, but that's okay. I want to push, press, and let go. And I've got a nice biscuit. Now, what I've got here is I've got some dough left over. So I could simply take that dough. Mine didn't cut all the way to the bottom. I can simply take that dough, roll it up in, and make some more biscuits by rolling it out. Just remember, don't handle it too much. Now, let's talk about pans for just a moment. I have here a round pan, and I also have a flat baking sheet. I like my biscuits fat and fluffy with soft sides. If you like that, then you want to put yours into a round cake pan. If you want the biscuits to be a little bit more done on the outside, a little bit crustier, then space them apart on a baking sheet. But when their sides are touching in a pan, that makes for soft sides. So I'm going to simply spray this with some spray. Very light, not a heavy hand, and I'm going to put my biscuits in my pan so that again they are touching. I'm going to come back and make something else with the rest of the dough in just a minute. Hi, here we are back in the kitchen. We've got our biscuits in the oven, but now we're going to take that same recipe and make something else. So I've made another recipe of biscuits and I've gotten them patted out already. This time I can take my rolling pin and I can roll them to about 1/4 of an inch. So they're a little bit thinner than what we did the first time with our biscuits. You've got several variations to take this basic biscuit dough and turn it into a lot of other things. So this time I'm going to take the center of my donut cutter and put it back in my biscuit cutter to make a donut. So this time I'm going to press it down, lift it up, and now I've got a hole in the center so I can use more dough with that. So this time we're cutting out a donut shape. I've got with me here a 1/2 stick of butter melted, and I've got cinnamon sugar mixture in here. So I'm going to take my donut, I'm going to dip it in the butter, I'm going to roll it around in the cinnamon sugar and place it on my baking sheet. This is my baking sheet. I can either spray it with the vegetable spray, or I like to put parchment paper down because this is kind of a messy deal. After it rolls around in the butter and the sugar, I have found that if you have some parchment paper, it really is for an easy cleanup. But if you don't, that's fine. Just spray it lightly with the vegetable spray. So let's get started. I've cut mine out. I'm going to lift these up. I'm only going to take the donut. I can leave the hole. I can do more with that, so I only want the donut. I can make as many of these as I can. Again, we rolled our dough a little bit thinner. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my donut. I'm going to put it in the butter, let it drip a little bit, put it in my sugar. I'm going to give it a roll around in the cinnamon sugar, and this time I want to twist it one time. I want to take my dough, twist it one time, and it forms a figure 8, and I'm going to lay it down on my pan. This kind of gets to be messy, so continue until you've done all of your biscuits or donuts. Into the butter, into the cinnamon sugar mixture, give it one twist, and it forms a figure 8. We'll do one more. Donut in the butter, in the cinnamon sugar mixture, toss it around, give it one twist in the form of a figure 8, and put it down on your baking pan. I would make sure I cut out all my donuts first. Then you see how messy your hands get. Then I can dip them all at one time. All right, so here's our second one. I'm going to finish rolling these out and we'll get these in the oven, and our biscuits are almost done, so we'll show you how our biscuits turned out. Hi, here we are back in the 4-H kitchen. Our biscuits are done, our cinnamon twists are done, and I'm hungry. Take a look at the biscuits. They're a light brown color. They've got straight sides. They do have a crack in the middle of it, and that's perfect. Our Crazy 8 cinnamon twists are great for breakfast, and they're easy to make too. You've got several recipes where you take a basic biscuit dough and turn it into cheese biscuits, pizza sticks, cinnamon twist, or even pineapple upside down biscuits. So have fun trying all of these recipes.